We hold these truths to be self-evident, that Hamilton is hotter than ever right now thanks to Lin-Manuel Miranda and Disney+, and dude has a surprising amount of hair that is still floating around to this day. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Hamilton's hair. Hamilton, 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 Hamilton. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Alexander Hamilton died on July 12, 1804, placing his life and death within the Georgian era. Georgian as in da 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 da. That George. Actually, there were several Georges, but King George is Georgian era, much like Queen Victoria is Victorian era. You get the idea. For budding hair and mourning jewelry enthusiasts, it really helps to learn how to differentiate between Georgian and Victorian, both in time period and aesthetic, because those are the two most prominent phrases you will hear when discussing jewelry from the 17 and 1800s. I will talk a little bit about some common differences while we discuss Hamilton's hair today, but make sure to subscribe and ring the bell for future videos on Georgian and Victorian jewelry. For now though, let's just jump right into our list. So here are my top 5 locks of Hamilton's hair.
Number 1.
I love everything about this particular lock of Hamilton's hair. Where to begin? Okay. For starters, this is a very Georgian style of jewelry. This is what is referred to as a portrait miniature, and these were very common of the time period. Unlike the Victorian era, the Georgian era did not have photography, so the best way to capture the likeness of your loved one was to commission a portrait. And portrait miniatures were highly sought after, as you could easily keep it in a pendant to wear as jewelry, and you could just as easily slip a sentimental lock of hair on the reverse side. The super fun thing about this portrait miniature of Hamilton is that this isn't displayed in a typical history museum. In fact, this is in the possession of the Bank of New York Mellon Corp., which was founded by Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr, and some other third guy who wasn't in the musical and therefore irrelevant. This particular pendant was made for Hamilton's youngest daughter, Eliza! Nope, not that Eliza. They actually named their second daughter Eliza. Eliza Sr., however, the one we all know and love from the show, actually clipped hair from Hamilton's head as he lay on his deathbed after the fatal duel with Aaron Burr. Although it does seem as though this particular piece was not made until several years after the fact, because it's inscribed with his daughter's married name and she was still just a child at the time her father died. I love the display of this piece because with the mirror you're able to see both sides. This may seem like a small thing, but if you'll notice, the hair is just kind of laid in there. It's not an intricate piece of artwork in and of itself. And this was decently common of the time period, but because of this, I so often see portrait miniatures in museums displayed portrait up with no description, photo, or reflection of the backside. And when I know that there's a good chance that there's hair on the reverse side with no way at all of seeing it, I tend to get cranky. So good job, Bank of Mellon. You display portrait miniatures better than some museums I've visited. And finally, what I would like to point out about this piece is that it is the largest quantity of Hamilton's hair that I personally have seen in one place. That means that this gives us the best idea of what his actual hair color was. Depending on how dense the hair is, the color can appear slightly different from what it may have looked like on someone's head, and this is true of all hair work. And of course, in the portrait miniature, as well as probably every other portrait you've ever seen of Hamilton, he's shown with white hair. This is because white wigs were all the rage and a clear status symbol of the time. So of course, he would want to be depicted this way in his portraits, but he was still under the age of 50 when he died. So although he may have had a few graying hairs, it's easy to see from this piece of hair jewelry that his prominent hair color was more of a light reddish brown. Fun fact, the first silver dollar coin produced by the US Mint in 1795 is called the flowing hair dollar. Hamilton's hair features a little more prominently in this ring, where you can clearly see that it is woven into a loose braid under the glass. This ring is in the care of the New York Historical Society, and as you can see, it is still paired with the original box, which is quite rare for jewelry that is this old. This ring was gifted to Nathaniel Pendleton by Eliza within the year following Hamilton's death. Pendleton was a district judge appointed by George Washington, and he served as Hamilton's second in the duel with Aaron Burr. It is said that Nathaniel Pendleton asked Hamilton if he wanted to use a pistol with a hairspring. This is a kind of trigger that goes off with a much lighter touch, but here's a fun couplet for you. He refused the hairspring, and now he's in a hair ring. I am not throwing away my shot. So that was a lie. Number 3. Of all the forms mourning jewelry can take, there is perhaps none more sobering than that which is worn by a grieving widow. This here is the mourning ring, which was actually worn as a necklace by Eliza. You can clearly see the engraving on the back says Alexander Hamilton, so there's no disputing whose hair is inside. OB stands for obiit, as in obituary, and indicates the date of death being July 12, 1804. The final line states that he was aged 46 years and 6 months. A curious fact about Hamilton's life is that historians are not in 100% agreement about how old he actually was. Back then, it was extraordinarily easy to lie about one's personal details, and there are conflicting records. Eliza here clearly believed that he was 46, while modern historians believe that he may have actually been either 47 or 49 at the time of death. This ring is still in the private collection of a descendant of Hamilton's, but it was formerly on display at the Museum of American Revolution. Now I want to take a little bit of time to talk about Eliza Schuyler Hamilton and what she was like as a widow. I stop wasting time on tears. I live another 50 years. It's not enough. She certainly did live another 50 years and quickly got to work preserving his legacy, but the line, I stopped wasting time on tears, is debatable, considering the fact that she continued to wear mourning clothes for those entire remaining 50 years of her life. When she was younger, before Alexander's death, she was often depicted wearing white and other light colors. But after the death of her husband, she traded in her white dresses for black and was said to have never worn color again. In fact, every portrait that I have seen of her post-Alexander's death shows her wearing nearly identical outfits of black with a white neck ruff and bonnet, which was the mourning style at the time he died. And although she did live long enough to see the Victorian era, she never traded in this Georgian style for the more elaborate Victorian mourning wear that followed. She remained, more or less, a widow stuck in time. Many tend to credit Queen Victoria herself as popularizing mourning wear because she, too, famously wore mourning for the remaining 50 years of her life after the death of her husband. But, I'm here to tell you that Eliza Schuyler Hamilton did it first, and she began her period of mourning 57 years before Queen Victoria's husband died. So here's my historical hot take. Eliza Hamilton was a better widow than Queen Victoria. Past the mourning jewelry that was commissioned for immediate family and close friends, Eliza kept several spare locks of hair that she would go on to distribute to extended family members or important political figures as she saw fit. Some were even given out many years after his death, and sometimes to people who did not even know him personally. We all, of course, know Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy. The Schuyler sisters. But they actually had several other siblings, and no one ever talks about the Schuyler brothers. Work. One of these Schuyler brothers was Philip Jeremiah Schuyler, whose second wife was a woman by the name of Mary Ann Sawyer. They met in 1807, 3 years after Hamilton's death, yet this lock of hair was sent to her along with a letter which reads, "My dear sister, my little girl has informed that you wish to have something that has been my Hamilton's, and as it gives me great pleasure to gratify you, I send you a lock of his hair for a ring. I am sure you would have been a great favorite of his, and therefore pray you wear it in remembrance of him. Your affectionate sister, E. Hamilton." Obviously, that hair never made it into a ring, but this lock of hair along with the letter sold at an auction in 2017 for a whopping $37,500. Now that's some expensive hair! When Alexander Hamilton was busy building a financial system for our country, I wonder if he ever in a million years pictured a single lock of his hair being sold for that much money 213 years after his death. Eliza was not the only surviving family member who was obsessed with telling his story. "I try to make sense of your thousands of writings. You really do write like you're running out of time." All being fierce supporters of their father, several of Hamilton's children helped Eliza make sense of those writings and sharing his story. One son in particular, James A. Hamilton, was known for distributing locks of his father's hair attached to papers, continuing to do so even after Eliza's death. This lock of hair is tied up with a string, and the ends of that string are stamped to the paper with a wax seal. The note reads, "The above is the hair of my father Alexander Hamilton, by me to Mrs. Andrew, October 27th, 1865, James A. Hamilton." This note was given to Eliza Jones Hersey Andrew, who was the wife of the fiercely anti-slavery Civil War governor of Massachusetts, and was given to her about 5 months after the Civil War ended. This lock of hair is currently in the collection of the Massachusetts Historical Society. So, there you have it, my top 5 locks of Hamilton's hair. Please tell me down in the comments which lock of hair was your favorite, or you know what? Tell me what your favorite part of the Hamilton musical is if you want. I may be a hair historian, but I am also a big ol' theater nerd, so whatever your jam is, let's geek out about it down in the comments. A revolutionary thank you to my supporters on Patreon. We all live and we all die, but it's thanks to you I tell these stories. Boom! Top 5 locks of Hamilton's hair. Done! You know, I almost made this list top 10 locks of Hamilton's hair, but that would have been a lot of hair, even for me. We're talking about antique hair work, work. We're talking about antique hair work, work. We're talking about antique hair work, work. Whoa, 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 hair work. I would belt that, but my voice is so extraordinarily loud that I blow out the microphone. I've been reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Some men think that I'm intense or I'm insane. You want a revolution, I want a revelation. So listen to my declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'ma compel him to include women in the sequel. Work. Look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now. Do you guys like the Hamilton musical, or musicals in general? Is there a crossover of hair people and musical people? Because if you like this, I'll do more. Hamilton was not the only person in this show who still has hair hanging around. Trust me, lots of them do.